It looks like Tesla stock is starting to go a little bit crazy in the last few days here. It is currently at about $391 at the time of this recording. Last few days, the stock has gone up quite a bit as well. There's a lot of things at play. I want to sort of go through my thoughts here. I think there's also a decoupling from Elon Musk, the person that is happening with the company that I don't think many people are really covering or talking about. And there's also sort of a lot of thoughts that I have around how the stock market's potentially valuing the company, the other disruptions that are at play here that directly correlate to the company. There's just a lot going on. And given the very extraordinary circumstances in the media right now, for obvious reasons, I think some of these things are going under the radar, and I want to discuss them in this video. None of this is financial or investment advice, but I do think it's worth going through. Now, the reason why I think the stock is up so much, I do think there is various things at play. Tesla stock has an investment meeting in November, a yearly investor meeting where people are going to be able to vote. Investors are going to be able to vote on Elon's new comp package, which was just put forth about a week ago or so. It's this famous, $8 trillion target where it would make Elon Musk $1 trillion worth of Tesla stock as a pay package. He would gain an additional 13% or so, 12 to 13% of the company. The day by which the investor base can vote on this package, the cutoff is on Monday. This coming Monday. So if you don't have stock up until that date and you say you purchase stock on Tuesday, then those shares, you can vote on the stock plan with. You have to, only the ones that are up to Monday are eligible to vote. And the reason why companies do that is because, hey, we don't want a person with $5 billion to buy stock the day before the meeting and then vote against the company and then sell it again, right? Sort of like it's a mechanism to make sure that people have skin in the game, to make sure that the investor base is actually it's actually representative of the company, right? It's very similar to how a democracy works, right? You don't want, this is like this whole illegal immigration discussion, right? Where, people don't want non-citizens to vote. It has a very similar structure where it doesn't make a lot of sense to have people to come in and vote on something that they haven't had skin in the game with right away. They need to have skin in the game before they're able to vote, so they can understand the culture, they can understand the different variables that go into why this thing works the way it does. Same exact thing with a public company. And in this case, Tesla has a huge one coming up here in November. So that's one thing that's going on. I think the other thing that's going on is that there is a wake-up call, finally an understanding from Wall Street where they're finally getting their head wrapped around the potential for robotaxi long term. It started very small. It started in Austin with a tiny little geofence. And then fast forward, so this was late June 20th or 21st, if I remember correctly. July, August, September. We're not even 3 months into this thing. And the Austin geofence, I believe, has 8x or more. So now the geofence in Austin is bigger than Waymo's. They also released the robotaxi network in the Bay Area, which is significantly bigger than Waymo's. And now it just came out that Nevada, I was corrected in the comments by native Nevadans? Correct me in the comment section. Tell me which way is right. They just approved Tesla for the robotaxi network as well. So in the span of not even 3 months, the company has supercharged, next level increased their geofence for the robotaxi network that eclipses Waymo's. It took them almost 10 years, let's call it, to get to where they are now. And Tesla was able to eclipse them in 3 months' time. The huge distinction here, obviously, is that Waymo doesn't have anybody in their cars in places like Austin and in places like California and in places like Phoenix, as an example. Tesla still has a safety driver or a safety rider in those vehicles. But the huge sort of takeaway there is that Tesla is able to get into any region it wants virtually by just dropping cars in that region because of the approach they took with their self-driving approach, this AI brain that just learned how to drive from people driving the car on any road in the United States, which allows the car to essentially drive itself literally anywhere. And the guidance from Elon Musk is that Tesla is about to release a new version, V14, that if you take sort of his direct verbiage, implies a safety level that's 2 to 3 times better than a human, which means that there will be an incident every 1 million miles or more, whereas the human driver, us as an example, the average driver gets into an incident every 500,000 miles. We'll see if that's correct. It's supposed to come out by the end of the month. We'll see if that actually comes to reality. Elon is known for, let's say, having ambitious timelines and ambitious targets, but he does end up being correct in the long term. It just takes a lot longer than people think, and this is sort of proven over and over again. You can see Starship, you can see the Model 3, Model Y. I mean, go down the list. Don't listen to the people that say Elon Musk fails at everything. It's just completely inaccurate. He is often late, but he does achieve some pretty amazing things. Don't buy stock based on this guidance. Do your own research. Now, what's interesting about how the market is pricing Tesla right now. So at current levels, the market cap is roughly 1.2 trillion, 1.25 trillion. If you sort of sit down and do some math, which I did on my end, and I try to understand, okay, what does that mean from a number of robo taxis on the road, right? What the market is clearly doing right now is that they're pricing in future earnings. They're pricing in future cash flows. The price earnings ratio of Tesla right now is somewhere around 227, 230, which means that the stock price, the valuation of the company, that 1.25 trillion market cap, the market capitalization, is expecting a 223-year return on investment based on current earnings, which, people usually live 80 years in the West, or in the United States, call it 78 now, which is sad, but hopefully we can reverse that trend. So that makes no sense from an investment perspective to want to invest money in a company and expect your money to return over 223 years, basically. But it is common to have a stock like Tesla, if you look at, for example, NVIDIA, to have a price earnings ratio that's closer to, say, 50. Or let's say in a very conservative scenario, like 20 or 30. If you look at it through that lens and you say, okay, what does this market cap price, for the shares mean within the context of getting a reasonable price earnings, let's just say 20 to 30, and how many sort of robo-taxis it would have in the road. And based on my math, it implies about 500,000 robo-taxis on the road, driving about 300 miles a day, earning about $500 a day in revenue, and being able to generate somewhere a little bit above $1 per mile in profit, which Tesla will be able to do by charging Uber prices, but running it at a much lower cost versus Uber because they don't have a driver, they don't have to pay for gas, et cetera, et cetera. That's what it implies. It implies about 500,000 robotaxis doing, basically working 16 hours a day. Compared to Uber's fleet in the United States, Uber has about, call it 1 million active drivers on an average day. So it's about half the fleet size of Uber. But because they're able to drive 16 hours a day, potentially even more, and there's also weekends, each robotaxi is going to be equivalent to 3 to 4 full-time Uber drivers. And 500,000 robotaxis is 3 months worth of Tesla's global production. So Tesla makes about 2 million units per year in cars. They're probably going to go closer to 3 million next year if everything goes well and they're able to release, new cars and all that good stuff. We'll see if that actually comes to fruition. But for Tesla to reach that market cap valuation that is fair for today's price, they would need 500,000 robotaxis working every day. 500,000. 3 months worth of production at current levels. From a production perspective, that's nothing. That's absolutely nothing, right? Literally, Tesla can be like, okay, next 3 months, next 6 months, let's say even, let's be conservative, and just say, okay, only the left-hand drive cars we can make right now, only the ones in the United States. It's going to take about 6 to 8 months for Tesla to make enough cars that they'll just drop in the robotaxi network and be able to run to generate the profits that would justify this market cap. So the production is not the problem. It's not a question of can Tesla make the cars and that does Tesla have the technology. What is the limiting factor is the regulation, is the ability for states to allow Tesla to operate in their regions. The huge plus here is that with the Trump administration and Secretary of Transportation, Secretary Duffy, he has been super open and super bullish about a federal framework that would allow any automaker, not Tesla, but any automaker, to start putting self-driving vehicles in the United States as a whole, instead of it being a piecemeal state-by-state thing. Right now, if you're a self-driving car company or like a Waymo or a Tesla or a Zoox or whatever, right now you have to work with each state and potentially each jurisdiction to operate your vehicles in those states. Now, that hasn't been that a big forcing function for regulations to sort of speed up or go faster, because every other player up until Tesla, their production was extremely limited in producing enough self-driving cars where they would be like, yo, let us go into this market. Let us go into this market. They've been limited by the number of cars they can make, and they've also been limited by the technology that they've employed to do self-driving vehicles, because they're using things like LiDAR, they're using things like radar. It takes a lot of work to get all those things to jive. When you get it to jive, it works really well, obviously. They're all over Austin. But it also creates a complexity where it's very hard to expand the network, because you have to map every road, you have to do a lot of heuristics, aka human code, to account for all the different situations. Whereas Tesla has a manufacturing line that's making millions of cars per year, where it has an AI brain and only uses vision and only uses 8 cameras around the car. And the AI brain figures out how to drive. And it drives like a human, because every owner of Tesla vehicles has been basically training the vehicle for the last 6-8 years, ever since FSD came to Tesla cars. And so now that you have a player in Tesla that is able to drop the cars in those regions, there's going to be a huge forcing function to get regulators to speed up their process, or for the federal government to step in and say, yo, let's actually figure this out so that more car companies can come to our states. Because if you sort of extrapolate this out into the future, self-driving cars are going to be a very good thing for lowering transportation costs, because you're removing the driver from the equation. Set aside the disruption to the labor piece that's going to happen here from drivers losing their jobs. Uber driving is not going to be a job for much longer, unfortunately, in a lot of these states. And it's something I want to track very closely here in Texas, because I believe Texas is probably going to be one of the first ones that's going to suffer from this greatly. And it's not a good thing from a labor perspective, but it is going to happen. And it is a good thing from a transportation perspective, because it drops the marginal cost of transportation greatly, to where you open up new markets that didn't used to exist, where you could have very affordable point A to point B transportation where you don't need public transit, right? If you can have a self-driving car that costs the same as a bus ticket to go from point A to point B, and you don't have to share a bus with somebody, you don't have to go there an hour early, you don't have to walk half a mile or a mile, you don't have to make your life sort of around this public transportation system. You can just go on the Robotaxi app, ride hail, and Robotaxi comes to your door and it takes you to your destination for a fraction of the cost of owning a vehicle. You can see how that massively opens up the economy in these regions. And so you're going to have, and we're not even talking about freight, like, once self-driving semis come down the pike. And what does it mean for areas where you have, hundreds of thousands of robotaxis? What does that do to the local economy? What does that do to the layouts of the city? How does that transform the economy? How does that remove the friction for people to want to go somewhere, because now it doesn't cost an arm and a leg to go to a freaking football game, and you got to go park. You got to pay $50 to go park. You got to spend 4 hours in traffic. You got to, be sober, right? Whereas a robotaxi, anyway, you can see how the doors start to open like crazy. Sucks for the drivers, huge, and we have to figure that out very, very, very quickly. And I'm a huge proponent of us figuring that out as quickly as possible. But you can't ignore the huge plus sides from this, which are obvious. Not to talk about even safety and road deaths and road injuries. Those go away with a self-driving vehicle, because they're going to be much better drivers than humans. There just are going to be. That's just a fact. You just have to study the technology to understand that this is a factual statement. It's not opinion, it's a fact. And so what that's going to cause, it's going to cause a lot of jurisdictions, a lot of cities, a lot of states, a lot of municipalities, heck, even countries, to be like, okay, I want that. I want to be able to make it very easy and cheap and affordable for my civilians, my citizenship, my country, my countrymen, my countrywomen, right? To go out and live a good life, to have safe transportation from point A to point B, to have affordable transportation from point A to point B. Tesla is the only one that has that value proposition from my perspective. In their ability to drop millions of self-driving vehicles per year on the world is going to cause a huge shift in how regulators view this technology, the ones that want a better economic outcome for their constituents in the long term especially. There will be regions that are going to be they're going to stonewall and they're going to block these things from happening, because they're going to view the disruption to the drivers as a bigger risk than the economic boon from having very affordable transportation. And you'll probably see this more in Europe than in anywhere else, if I were to guess. And you're definitely going to see it in some states in the United States as well that are super protective of local economies, like from that perspective where, they're trying to protect the drivers, which again, I'm not opposed to, but the reality is that this is where we're going. And so there's going to be a forcing function for a lot of these places to wind down regulation and to allow the company to come in. So I believe that's probably the biggest thesis here for the stock. Again, it's about 500,000 cars, robo-taxis working, 7 days a week, 16 hours a day, making a little bit over $1 in profit per mile. That's what this market cap represents. And if Tesla can do that, and they can show a pathway for 1 million robo-taxis doing that, 2 million robo-taxis doing that, 3 million robo-taxis doing that, for my opinion, not financial investment advice, this is probably just the beginning. And as I recorded this video, the stock is now up to $394. So, and I'm sure if you're a Tesla investor that's following the story closely, stuff like this probably gets you really excited. And very few people understand this, right? Very few people understand that this is actually happening, or they doubt that this is actually happening because they're like, oh, this has never happened before. It's crazy that a stock can do this, right? And then, a lot of us psychos are like holding Tesla stock like crazy, massive amounts of Tesla stock, right? And people are like, oh my God, you're a crazy person. Maybe, but maybe I'm not, right? And there's not a lot of investment firms out there that cater to that sort of person, that sort of mentality that is willing to make an outsized bet on disruptive technologies like Tesla. And that's why I've partnered with Rebellionaire to sponsor this video, because Matt Smith and Bradford Ferguson, who run Rebellionaire, that's that investment firm thesis, is that they don't shy away from partnering with people that have financial goals in mind that also want to have an outsized position in Tesla. And these guys will employ tactics like covered calls, selling, and adding, trimming and adding to try and help people reach their financial goals while they hold a large Tesla position. They do a bunch of really unique analysis. They've done cross-country FSD trips. They do a lot of novel research on the energy side of the business, a lot of novel research on the human or robot side of the business. They understand the entire adjacent industries around it and adjacent to the adjacent industries, right? They do a lot of research into ensuring that this thesis plays out long-term. And so if you're sick and tired of trying to find an investment firm that gives you the cold shoulder because you want to own a lot of Tesla and they're like, you're crazy, basically, that's too much, Rebellionaire might be the right company for you, because they will actually embrace that type of thesis and they'll work with you to reach your financial goals. So if this interests you and you have more than $1 million in Tesla stock, please reach out to rebellionaire.com/Farzad, rebellionaire.com/Farzad, and that's how they'll know that I sent you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful, informative, all that good stuff, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.